YouTube comments from a video titled, Watch, the most compelling argument against tech in schools, Sophie Winkleman. Part 24.
EdTech 321 wrote,
Any responsible solution. I have plenty to share. But I guess the wise words of high class have little to no significance given the stark reality of downtrodden communities. Example: smartphones and its appropriate usage could not only be beneficial, but prove comparative in many ways, because of prices associated with quality books and traditional education, while imparting the standards associated with education. It's not possible in a country like India with 5T economy. Nevertheless, you must be speaking for citizens of developed nations instead of a responsible citizen. Thanks.
Michael Koch G4L wrote,
Thank you for this excellent speech, Sophie. I agree wholeheartedly with all of it. I'm a 73-year-old Englishman with 2 daughters in their 30s, and when they were preteen children, 1989 to 2004, we didn't have any online devices for anyone in the family to use, but there was, of course, the television. I was the house husband in our family, and we put severe restrictions on how much time and when our children could watch TV so that up to 4 p.m. each day was TV free, as was after 6 p.m., which was dinner, bath, and reading together time. During each day, they could read, paint, draw, go on nature rambles, visit castles, museums, churches, or stately homes, play with friends, or just sit and talk about whatever they were interested in. As I'm an amateur photographer, we also spent many hours out looking for pretty countryside, old villages, and wildlife. The idea was to let them experience as wide a range of things as we could, and to ignore the droning monologue of "but girls don't like engineering, sport, science," and let them see for themselves. After all, both their parents are aerospace engineers, one who loves the theater/films and the other who loves music. Did we get everything right? Of course not. But we never resorted to abdicating our responsibilities by sticking a screen in front of them or pushing them off to nursery schools, after school clubs, etc., unless they wanted to go, which is why they both played rugby for the local club. It wasn't our idea, but we didn't stop them doing the things they wanted, even when lots of parents tut-tutted us for it. Rugby is a boys' game, apparently, and they might get hurt / they're such pretty girls. So good luck with your campaigns, Sophie, and more power to the teachers who engage with the pupils. They certainly inspired me when I was in school.
At Mindio Euron Fuking Biz 6737 wrote,
This screen ANDSM exposure should be UPTO parents ANDTHE schools BUTINNIWA while connected TOTHE governments. BIG Tech AND, most importantly NOTTHE digital ID. THE elites want this digital ID and DLE using THEOLD adage WO and someone think OFTHE children TO push FI digital ID. Children ARETHE responsibility OF the parents period.
At Alphabet Soup 5030 wrote,
As a teacher in a school that is all screens and heavy online learning platform use, I 100% agree. I pine for the days of books, pen and paper. I wonder if we will ever return. And is it too late for this generation?
At Mike Doedia wrote,
Thanks for the shout out to Catherine Burbelsing, my favorite headmistress. She should be made the education minister in the UK. The school system in Britain will change.
At Princess May 9921 wrote,
This one reason why some people choose to home educate, threatened by Labour's upcoming NEW Child Safety Bill. Please urgently write to MPs and Lords. Home-educated children are often a great deal happier than their school-going peers. Allowed to explore the real world, learn at the kitchen table, and learning practical skill, cooking, handwriting, counting in the real world, drawing. One of the reasons often given for the importance of school is socialization. But what is the quality of that socialization? It is not for nothing that 13-year-olds are carrying knives.
Phyllis Lovelace, 8151 wrote,
I absolutely want to hit the phone out of their hands when I see parents with children of any age, but even more so young children. Makes me so furious. Children need to interact with human beings, especially their parents, not screens. This has got to be stopped. There was a little girl on the tube yesterday who kept repeating the names of the stations the next station is. Mummy, it was such a delight to hear it. Children learn by repetition. Thank you to this speaker. This is an incredibly important matter.
At Samantha Clugston, 6685 wrote,
Teach younger generations have been LEDBYTHE knows with social media, clickbait and consumerism that teach OF social interaction HAS become SO much more difficult. ITS being made purposefully that people do and interact. That's also WHY social hubs like pubs air being made TO shut down.
At Lissa Burnage wrote,
That was a compelling speech, and one that made me feel quite emotional at times. Greg Braden talks a lot about what does it mean to be human? A huge question we need to have forefront in our minds as AI marches forth. I've just left the civil service after 4 years of training predominantly online. I found it so less ineffective and dissatisfying. It's not just tech in schools, but across the board. Thank you, Sophie, for a great speech.
At Heathu 5391 wrote,
In years gone by, there has been lots of learned talk about the different ways of learning: visual, oral, kinetic. The problem with removing paper books, pens and writing paper from children is that the kinetic experience is limited to tapping and swiping. The lack of variation of movement means everything is connected with the same physical act. Reading something in a paper book has multiple hooks: the room you're sitting in, the time of day, the quality of light, the position of the information on the page relative to whole page or spread you are looking at, the imagination involved in interpreting the words and making them pictures in your head, the weight of the book, how far through the book you are when you encounter that information. Doubtless those with education and psychological qualifications will be able to list a whole lot more. I am by no means opposed to technology and all it can do for us. But the phasing out of this aspect of kinetic learning by removing interactions with paper, pen and physical books is surely going to have deleterious long-term consequences that nobody intends.
Akforest 2745 wrote,
Tech is the worst you could ever do for anyone, not just kids. Computers all-day school work play that was a poor move. Consumerism. Extremely poor move. The absolute worst a species could do. No physiology involved whatsoever on top of it. Adults in their spare time. You know what's happening? People are living inconsequential lives, all just so spoiled, lazy FKNAEs get rich. It's FKN pathetic.
At Peter Clark 6290 wrote,
Humanity will continue to bounce along the bottom until it recognizes the importance of reproducing fully enabled replacements. The design we inherit is both magnificent and flawed. With access to genius, great creativity, a love of beauty, coupled/hobbled with a carnivore's problem-solving skills, which include violence. Babies/infants/children are born without sin. They need loving care and the tools/challenges to take on the incredible burden of a full life, well lived. Where to start? Is the family unit too small, Etsy? Science needs this the most. Take the lead. The situation where criminality, substance abuse, underachievement, lack of courage/resilience/self-esteem are well within the range of normal.
At Morgan's Weifel 2488 wrote,
If a parent is giving their phone all of their attention, they are teaching their child that their phone is more important than they are. So the child feels disconnected from their parent. The detrimental cycle begins.
At Morgan's Weifel 2488 wrote,
I taught kindergarten for over 21 years in the Louisiana public school system. Over the last 10 years, every teacher saw gradual changes escape to critical issues within the classroom. First, students displayed disrespectful behaviors toward teachers. Then inability to focus or complete given tasks, unable to self-regulate. Lack of parental participation at school, lack of parental support from home. Disrespectful towards their child's teacher. Thus, student mimics same behavior in the classroom. Students lack creativity or desire to create, not interested in. Painting, using manipulatives to build structures, can't figure out how to use blocks, scary. Unable or takes one-on-one assistance to help a child put a puzzle together, if not, they give up, unable to tell me a story. And so much more. Also, children are not being read to at home, nor are they learning nursing rhythms/folk tales. My degree is early childhood education. The schools took every out of our classroom which was developmental appropriate and told me to teach the curriculum. Read the script and nothing more. 8 teachers joined me at the end of the year by not renewing their contracts with a small school district in Mississippi. I know exactly why our schools are failing and no one within the school system cares.
At Happiness Day W3F wrote,
In the last days, people will be lovers of self. This is what the phones are doing to people, making them ignore the ones around them, and instead making them love themselves alone. Something to ponder if you are a person who have lived at least 20 years before the smartphones became mainstream. Do you think that your quality of life has increased after the availability of smartphones? Obviously, there are many uses for the smartphone, but weren't you happier in times past when you didn't have those benefits being offered by the smartphone?
At Mark Hines P8D wrote,
I have been saying similar things to what Sophie is talking about for years. Screen time has become an addiction like a drug to our young children and adults as well. I am sick of seeing so many parents leading a poor example for their children. I see many parents who take their kids to the park and have their heads stuck in their iPhone or computer, paying little or no attention to their children. I have heard children say, "Look at me, Mummy." The mother does look up from their iPhone and simply says, "Wonderful, darling." What a disgrace as a parent. What example are they setting? I can go on about many examples where people are not unaware of what's happening around them because of technology and their ignorance of the harm it is causing to the people and loved ones around them.
And Nemo wrote,
We all know the problem that this is causing. Where are the solutions? Why can't schools block internet access or have extremely limited access to it during the school day?
At Marilyn Bushel 2842 wrote,
Amen. One of the saddest moments in my life just happened the other day. My granddaughter has always loved to read and to be read to. What a joy it's been for me to read piles of books to my grandchildren every time we were together. It was our very favorite thing to do. I had to limit them to 5 books each before bed. When all 3 of them were spending the night, they would agree to go up to bed over an hour before their bedtime so all their choices could be read as we cuddled in bed. Such precious memories. We also loved play games and exploring the outdoors. Well, it's no surprise what happened when they were given smartphones. Grandma's house isn't so much fun anymore. Grandma limits phone time to 30 minutes when they're over. Arguing and crying erupts when it's time to unplug. Little excitement for all the fun we had. Not very excited to come to Grandma's. Not as many phone calls. I know their parents aren't trying to hurt them or hurt our beautiful relationship. There's resentment if I should say anything. My story is being repeated all over our country, US, and it's so sad and damaging. As for my sad moment, my granddaughter, who always loved to read, said to me, "I hate to read. It takes too long and I want time for my phone." I cried. Parents, if you read this, I beg you to not give your child a cell phone, and if they already have one, put severe limits on screen time. Don't let it destroy real relationships between family and friends. Be the parent before it's too late. God bless you.
At Klausmelhoff 1464 wrote,
I totally agree with every word. Extremely saddened at the same time. 2 years ago, I bought my 10-year-old, at that time a phone, so that she could keep in touch with me as my health stopped me from visiting or picking her and her younger brother up from school. We, the children, and I would cook and eat together, and they would spend Friday nights and Saturday with me, and we would play games, go karting, or just visit the local council playground. I do get a daily emoji, but not the written conversation that I had hoped for. This mistake of mine grieves me no end. In the process, I've lost my young friends.
At Darylnay 1501 wrote,
Before we devised our kids, we institutionalized them. Love this lady's talk, but she's wrong when she suggests that we ought to pursue the tyranny of the GUFT. Banning tech use, it has to be the parents who make these decisions for their kids. The government needs to stay out of our lives.
At Darylnay 1501 wrote,
Before we devised our kids, we institutionalized them. Love this lady's talk, but she's wrong when she suggests that we ought to pursue the tyranny of the GUFT. Banning tech use, it has to be the parents who make these decisions for their kids. The government needs to stay out of our lives.
At Original Art on Commission wrote,
This is so important, but what schools and parents have the conviction and confidence to just say no? Homeschooling and creating community around this no phones ideal is not for the faint of heart. I'm happy to hear this being suggested. China seems to have managed to effectively limit children's use, as I taught these kids online. Parents in China also very attentive to this. So important to find answers to this problem for the West.
At Deanna Sanv 8931 wrote,
Homeschooling and microschooling aren't the answer if the same technology is allowed to take over, but they can be an answer. Parents should be deciding these things in regards to their children, not governments or schools. My son is grown, but if I had a child now, I would raise the child the same way that I did my son, without television or computers, living in the woods, with animals and lots of work to do.
At Jeruha 1 wrote,
If this is not one of the biggest oversights, or better said, unspoken catastrophes our generation has inflicted humanity, it's up there. Thank you. Awareness on this topic is so important.
At Daniel Stone YW1RN wrote,
You see very young children at school extremely upset and beside themselves, throwing themselves around, and groups of teachers walking straight past like nothing is happening. No wonder children have had to weigh up the anti-is it to get any attention. Children see absolutely zero respect and then have zero trust in adults. We're not wondering about the suicide rate, I hope I know. We don't think of it IDK, how we don't. The schools around here are the biggest murderers of children and adults in history.
At A Curious Child wrote,
And it all starts in the Garden of Eden. All else just being the nuclear fallout to this very moment. Eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil haunting men to this very moment. The door, the way, the truth, and the life only, the Lord Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit forever and ever. Amen. Hallelujah.
At Daniel Stone, YW1RN wrote,
Teachers are taught or are not allowed to really engage with children. This is against reality. Under these circumstances, the children way better off at home where they can display a souffle. Actually be looked after. We're sending our children off to a place which is not designed for individual care and attention. It's stranger danger when the last one wasn't actually real. It's making the children totally lost, as they are totally left to look after themselves. From what age for? Ridiculous. Thank you for your video.
Truden D wrote,
The worst thing is, they are robbing our children of their parents, their love and kindness, and their care. Every one of us is separated from every other human beings. When we want to know something, we go on the internet, and the information that we get has a message to it. These days, for example, everything great originated in India for haven's sakes.
At France Flowspace wrote,
I find it strange that at Alliance for Responsive Citizenship they can find boundless compassion and concern for Western children but none for Palestinian children. So much so that they would have a Grams Pound Southside supporter like Douglas Murray on their platform. It feels like they're saying, our children should be protected from too much screen time but Palestinian children shouldn't be protected from being slaughtered en masse and carpet bombed. I never understand how conservatives seem to get it so right on children when it's children they think of as their own but have no compassion for children for whom our government is complicit in slaughtering. Make it make sense. Love Sophie Winkleman though Big Suze was such a great character on Peep Show.
At Tim 2-954 wrote,
The raucous exuberance of youth was being replaced with an anxious, irritable insularity. Hear, hear. That is the best formulation I have yet heard on the nature of the change in Western society I have observed in my lifetime. Anxious, irritable insularity almost defines leftist politics.
At Kafa 8059 wrote,
The opening illustration is not just caused by technology. The threats of harassment accusations, even from smiling to someone with insistence, should be accounted for in keeping people from engaging in courting physically instead of relying on social medias and virtual apps.
At Love Salt Hill Cabin 1 wrote,
Fantastic speech. Roald Dahl got it so right in his poem about Mike Teavee in his very famous book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Speaking about the screen, he says, It rots the senses in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind, he can no longer understand a fantasy of fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. This is only a snippet, but I commend the entire poem. This book, ironically, is sitting in many a school classroom library catching dust. Instead, they choose to watch the ridiculous Johnny Depp movie version, which totally slates Roald Dahl's genius work. I printed out this particular section of the poem and put it up on my classroom wall. This speech and others like it need to be broadcast far and wide. Let's follow Sweden's example.
At Bonboy 9590 wrote,
Praise God. After enduring numerous challenges, I'm now a proud homeowner, blessed with an incredible $155,000 bi-weekly income. God's faithfulness has restored my family's happiness and prosperity, fulfilling His promises. Everything is falling into place, and I'm grateful for His unwavering love and provision. God bless America.
At Chris 78787 wrote,
I teach elementary school. The students can't sit still for anything. They can't focus or regulate their emotions properly. I have never seen it this bad before. It's like they are constantly going through video game, social media withdrawal. Something needs to be done about this.
At Willie Jababandi 3402 wrote,
This is absurd. An actress with no insight into how things actually work in schools or the pedagogical environments in which educators practice. Are there poor examples of technology being used in schools? Sure, and there are stellar ones. Does she think giving a kid a book equates to automatic academic success? Come on, the doors that technology is opening for students of all kinds is a gift. If you want to argue that educational technology needs to be better integrated, then yes, 100%. But as is typical, let's just throw the baby out with the bathwater. As with everything, it's a balance. But no, let's clap for an actress who is a member of the royal family, totally detached from the realm of the classroom. And I can't help but wonder how long after this presentation she looked at her cell phone. Not long, I bet.
At Peter Sexton 5681 wrote,
Bring back a classical education now, before it's too late. I fear if we don't, we have only ourselves to blame, to the consequences which are all about us. And by the way, God is our only salvation.
At Richard Costi wrote,
I am an elementary teacher nearing retirement in Canada. Her speech was spot on. However, despite the ARC's efforts to move us in a positive direction, she is surely a voice in the wilderness. Our school board eliminated libraries and librarians several years ago. We now have digital libraries of online resources. I recently had an 11-year-old student say to me, I love those books that have pictures. He meant graphic novels. And those other ones with just words on a page are awful. So our board has been successful in championing the end of books. Add to this mix the DEI stupefaction of the curriculum. Our grade 6 writing curriculum mandates that I have students write about topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, not persuasive, biographical, argumentative, or informational pieces, work that would require thinking. I do not have a cell phone, but am well versed in all classroom technologies. I am considered a dinosaur by most younger peers. Again, Sophie Winkleman was, and is right, but I don't see it going much further than a nice talk given at a conference.
At Victoria Hasselden wrote,
Also here in Auckland, I am constantly recusing books being let go by the local library, especially colonial, deemed old hat and irrelevant history. We don't have shelf space is also an excuse. I picked up 2 excellent CD talking books on a day-by-day account of the Psalm WW1. British history is no longer taught in the junior schools, so I was not surprised when speaking with a 22-year-old seeking a career in the Navy who had no idea who was Hitler.
At Adrienne Maffier 4677 wrote,
Education needs to essentially get back to its origin, a process of assisting and guiding another into self-realization, of unfolding and developing themselves into who they are in life, who their true selves are in life. This is a process of self-discovery. Regrettably and sadly, education has become the antithesis to this process. It has become a process of molding and shaping members of society to fit the manufactured needs of the society, in particular the economic wants of the business sectors and the economic policies of a government. It has essentially become a tool to condition and shape humans to be the supply of labor and creativity to these economics. Developing the skill to use screen-based technologies fits the demands of these economics also. This is a mass experiment peddling as progress, the future. But the harm it is causing mentally, emotionally, ecologically, socially, and physically is deeply, deeply concerning, and mass use of these technologies needs to be rolled back and reassessed. This harm is definitely impacting children, but it is impacting adults also across a broad age range. Excellent speech. Thank you.
As Stephen Daniels 2091 wrote,
This is thin. Biologically, most great leaders are men. Education of boys must be prioritized. Elementary and secondary education must be segregated. Boys must be insulated from the collective horrors of feminism specifically and femininity generally. Teachers of boys must be male. 2/3 of boys' education must be industrial arts, sports, and other outdoor learning.
the three Yabeams wrote,
The children are not quizzed on every subject at Michaela School because it has a restricted curriculum. O most experts youth, one man can give birth to the elements of an art, but only another can judge how they can benefit or harm those who will use them. And now, since you are the father of writing, your affection for it has made you describe its effects as the opposite of what they really are. In fact, it will introduce forgetfulness into the soul of those who learn it. They will not practice using their memory because they will put their trust in writing, which is external and depends on signs that belong to others, instead of trying to remember from the inside, completely on their own. You have not discovered a potion for remembering, but for reminding. You provide your students with the appearance of wisdom, not with its reality. Your invention will enable them to hear many things without being properly taught, and they will imagine that they have come to know much while, for the most part, they will know nothing. And they will be difficult to get along with, since they will merely appear to be wise instead of really being so. Socrates on New Tech. So it goes.
Etches Abraham wrote,
This country half of the population is paranoid about everything, and the other half are determined to destroy the world. There is no winning. Must be the ultimate of refugee settlement.
At Maverick Sings 7313 wrote,
Yea, if you remove tech from the children's lives, your children are going to be way behind everyone else who will use it. In fact, right now, nobody learns anything in school or university. There are better educators in the online community where your children can learn better without someone putting a gun on their head for not completing their assignment and judging them for failing an exam because they couldn't solve a math problem in 5 minutes.
At Anai 157 wrote,
540. It makes no sense to me to imply that schoolwork done on a screen is somehow damaging, whereas schoolwork done on paper on a slate is beneficial. I've seen no well-designed research that supports this, nor does it make intuitive sense. If such allegations are made, they need to be supported with a full and thorough explanation. I am watching this video on my screen right now. Is that somehow sinister?
At Judith Moore 9174 wrote,
Judith Moore, it is alarming how many parents push a pram with one hand, while their attention is on their device. On buses, almost every parent with a pram has their device in their face, and often even toddlers have a device in their face. Almost every school child that I pass has a phone in their hand. Also, every college student, young person, or older has a device glued to their hand, often in their face, constantly. It is like being among aliens, a new species, removed from the real world, desensitized
blind and deaf to every normal human behavior, never observing the amazing nature of anything of interest, never hearing birdsong or viewing the splendor of Ensture. It's frightening. The future of this generation, bleak.
At Angelinabu 1250 wrote,
Very soon we'll need AI to teach humans romance lovemaking. We humans take life for granted. There is no respect for Mother Earth. We have become disconnected from her. The next she retaliates, none of this AI will help.
At Chris Koch 1241 wrote,
I remember visiting a lovely outdoor gathering spot with our young children around 2008. Trees, a great fountain around which were packed benches. Our eldest, who was about 10 at the time, was wandering around the periphery, observing. At this point, we had not allowed our kids to have handheld digital devices. Every person of every age, seated around the fountain, was chatting with at least one other person there, but only via their PHONES or other handheld digital thing. After about the third time circling this phenomenon, our eldest came up to me with a concerned look, saying, "Look at all the victims."
At Margot Moore G5R wrote,
Playing out of doors and learning to work with one's hands, whether sewing,
knitting, cooking, simple carpentry, or gardening for both sexes would do so much better than the electronic nanny for all children.
At Asen Burns wrote,
Now talk about the porn, fetish, casual sex culture addictions, and the connection to transgender ideology. What adults refuse to admit. Everything OUT there for adults ultimately falls into WK OFT vulnerable.
At James Harris HL2BM wrote,
The idea is to dumb down generations, and that's exactly what they want. Note that these days, no one can even remember telephone numbers. What she says about the brain is true. Again, the dumber you have the masses, the easier they are to control.
At Rustshoe 5068 wrote,
My screen time as a teenager back in the early 1980s may have involved watching one Friday or Saturday night, say The Guns of Navarone, whilst ensconced on the sofa, with a tray of tea and biscuits beside me, my social life on hold, as I knew my friends were probably watching the same channel, same movie, especially if it was wet outside. I just don't recall ever scrambling to touch base with anyone during my many hours watching TV at the time. If the phone in the hall rang, it wasn't sometimes worth the effort extracting myself from the sofa to answer it, even if I had the house to myself. With this technology, terrestrial broadcast television, well before the internet and mobile phones, the Iron Curtain fell. Perhaps the young people behind the Iron Curtain were craning their necks to peer over to also watch The Guns of Navarone. Great movie. Great characters. A treat at the time. No reason why it can't be a treat today, though. The vision of myself back then watching war films or Ealing comedies or carry-on films. The couch to myself looks like just the kind of rest the doctor ordered. Would have ordered, say. And the radiation from the cathode ray tube was always well back. It all looks a tad civilized now, relaxing, reveling in the filmmaker's art on a big screen.
At James Bell 7220 wrote,
A good read. The Shallows. What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains by Nicholas Carr. Carr illuminates the effects of the evolution of communications technologies from clay tablets to smartphones on cognitive abilities. When coming to smartphones, Carr cites cause for optimism. Cognitive and social dysfunctions in preteens and teens are largely put into remission by 2 weeks in woodland activities camps without social media devices.
At Elon 007 wrote,
Thank you, Sophie and Rachel, and all others trying to preserve a sense of wonder and reverence for nature, for our human nature. A child's world is fresh and new and beautiful, full of wonder and excitement. It is our misfortune that for most of us, that clear-eyed vision, that true instinct for what is beautiful and awe-inspiring is dimmed and even lost before we reach adulthood. If I had influence with a good fairy who is supposed to preside over the christening of all children, I should ask that her gift to each child in the world be a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life as an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantment of later years, the alienation from the sources of our strength. Rachel Carson, The Sense of Wonder.
Chris Murdoch, 137, wrote,
Such a shame that over the last 14, 15 years, when we should have been investing in the teaching profession instead of undermining it, cutting funding in real terms, and imaging tech would make up the shortfall.
At Manuji 6873 wrote,
I used to feel stuck in the same cycle, repeating the same mistakes no matter how hard I tried to change. But book Mind Decoding by Kizano opened my eyes. I realized my subconscious beliefs were shaping my reality. When I started aligning my thoughts with God's truth, everything shifted. I just wish I had read it earlier.
At user GX4Y4CV2M wrote,
Unfortunately, I think that with the development of AI, people who don't develop as the technology develops will get out into the workforce and be unprepared. If there isn't going to be equal limitations on the workplace, then the workplace will advance further than these schools that don't teach all of this tech advancement, especially AI advancement. Perhaps something to consider.
At Autumn Leaves 2766 wrote,
Jonathan Hett's book, The Anxious Generation, highlights these problems very well, too. This is a compelling speech. You often see families in cafes where they're all glued to their smartphones and no one is actually talking to each other anymore. My phone is for calls, texts, and taking photos only. In my opinion, no child should have a smartphone before the age of 16.
At Lyra Oppenheimer 8965 wrote,
I agree with her stance, but the reality is TV was just as bad an escapism in my youth, the 60s, 70s. And looking around at people can get some angry colon. What are you looking at? Talking to women can get a man accused of SH. Some students can develop their tech brain and do amazing things by the time they are 20. But yeah, zombies, most of them.
At RJE1630 wrote,
I am rather interested to know who the number of audience members are who weren't clapping throughout the speech, particularly at the part about directing more money toward teachers, and the particularly powerful statement on why it must be considered progress to render ourselves obsolete. Just out of curiosity, of course.
At Freya Forest 1374 wrote,
Amen. What a beautiful, powerful speech, and the delivery was phenomenal. This is the issue of our times as far as I'm concerned. Even for us adults. We need to make a conscious effort to reclaim our brains, our minds, our very souls. If you're reading this, I believe in you.
At Story Sandpeems wrote,
This is wonderful. Thank you. If only governments would listen. They don't follow the science. They only promote what's less expensive. We need to invest in teachers and their training rather than in screens. Common sense.
At John Hart 4321 wrote,
Children should never be given unfiltered access to the internet for one reason. It gives the pornographers access to your children. A seared innocence is almost impossible to heal.
At Mary Brown 72091 wrote,
When my sons were at school, I noticed how IT seemed to be the most important subject. I grew up without IT and computers, so did everything with books and times tables for maths. Even now, I can recall times tables and spellings. I loved reading as a child and still read books every day. Was in a restaurant with my son recently where a girl aged 2 was given a little laptop. She was in a high chair and was engrossed with the screen. When my sons were in high chairs, we chatted to each other during the meal. There are screens everywhere now. At my local railway station, they wanted to close the ticket office. I now see ticket machines on the platforms. My bank is closing in November. We have lost 3 banks in our town. Everywhere you ring, they say go online, blah blah. I stopped going to M&S due to self-serve tills, and the shop closed last year. Neither wonder there is so much loneliness now for all generations. Everything is digital now. I do not do online shopping as I like to get out and chat to staff on the tills about the weather, etc.
The steward, Branson, wrote,
No points awarded for recognizing the brain-dead zombie nation that has been created by design. LL parents are dumb, their parents were dumb, and their kids and grandkids will be dumb. This is the 21st century.
A Traveljum 25 wrote,
Technology is an enabler. There are good results to provide customized learning to suit different needs. But totally agree that time in school or home should be spent socializing, exploring in the outdoors, or just choose to wander.
At Corbeil Ford 5754 wrote,
I've recently returned to teaching in the UK after 9 years out of our system. I've been on supply for 3 weeks, and I could write a book based on sickening evidence I've seen in the places we call schools. Huge dominating smart screens in every classroom, banks of Chromebooks and iPads in every classroom. Nobody seems to teach from the front anymore. It's very sad.
At Inkling 777 wrote,
Years ago, and living in Seattle, there was a home in my neighborhood that had a large banner in a window saying brainchild. I wondered what that meant. So one day when most of the young Asian parents were coming and going, I went in. What I discovered was a school that taught basic skills in a very hands-on way. Of particular importance was the use of an abacus to teach arithmetic in a way that young minds can understand. Those who are interested in learning more can search online for Brainchild Learning Center Seattle.
At West Simope 81 wrote,
At family gatherings, in the home or elsewhere, I made it abundantly clear early on to grandchildren and their parents that the iPhone was not welcome in my presence for a defeated conversation. Pleased to say, Grandad has had his way. Thank you, Sophie Winkleman. Brilliant presentation.
At Rust Shoe 5068 wrote,
Teenagers are only teenagers for 7 years. My old man, who is 86, only took up computing when he retired. He's been computing for 20 years. A right silver surfer. But he does only have a dumb phone. He's much more expert than me. Surely teenagers should push away the demands of tech and wait till they are older. Otherwise, life really will pass them by.
At Teacher Reads 1076 wrote,
Amen. As a former teacher who retired after 16 years in 2021, this is part of the reason why I cannot stand for tech in the classrooms, because of all of what is behind this demonic system. And I truly believe that kids are not learning anymore. They are so far behind.
At Rust Shoe 5068 wrote,
I can't see a future for songwriting if an artist inspired will no longer feel it natural to write on the back of the proverbial envelope or a napkin. I've also gleaned in recent years, at least from what I have noticed, that mixed school orchestras have very few boys compared with girls. Are boys more likely to want to use all their spare time playing video games rather than learning to play a musical instrument?
At Glen Valley 4326 wrote,
One has to be a skeptic when using smartphones. Luckily, I was 60 years old when I first used a smartphone. So I was streetwise and worldly-wise at the time. I do love the documentaries on the smartphone. But my first love is reading books, especially history books.
Adele 959595 wrote.
I've got an idea. Why don't we group the kids together, endless variables, young ones showing grand elders, grand ones swaying the young ones by engaging, through the experience of watching oneself, through the young one's eyes, how engaging the old ones with the young ones is how we have fun learning, if we're doing it right. Good luck with that.
Asilis C. wrote.
Birth rates are rapidly declining. Teen mental well-being is shattered across the board. Socioeconomic opportunities are completely evaporating. Myopia is due to children not having enough intense light in their younger years, not necessarily due to screen use alone. For children to safely go outside, especially in the U.S., the very foundation of urban planning needs a rapid and radical shift to allow children to safely go outside. With safety, I mean that cars and roads are extremely hindering for the children's development. What are we doing to our children? Indeed. The great unborning is rapidly underway, and those who make it get broken at a young age.
At Ice Castles 1432 wrote.
She was never on a bus. Everyone knows tech is bad. This is nothing new. It comes down to the management of devices by the parent, full stop. We don't need an actress to tell us that. I'm not envious of your wealth and title either. I'm incensed of your ignorance and to put out the same old everyone knows.
At Asatoma 1 wrote.
Screen time management can be taught/learned. Without treatment, people like sheep post-COVID. The richness of in-person and analog content is more appreciated. In the real world, leveraging larger and larger amounts of information is the definition characteristic of human civilization, and in the current age, screens are unavoidable. Everything should be intentional, specific, and moderate. Sounds like screens and social media are being used synonymously and being conflated with EdTech. I guess the point is that EdTech is being deployed suboptimally, which it probably is, but that's a teching issue, not a screens issue.
At Abuser 25 wrote.
I work in a Unity primary school. I am horrified that all the KS2 children have their own iPad. You would not believe the time wasting they cause charging them, finding the pen, doodling while they should be listening, let alone the utterly pointless work the students do on them. Then we have a staff meeting where the Unity bots tell us how important and helpful iPads are and how we program them to help each individual student, followed the next week by a staff meeting on how to claw back lost time. And these bots run the academy. It is utter lunacy. The children are learning nothing. The classroom is chaos. This is on a Middle England good school. Desperately sad.
At Normati 4409 wrote.
This edition is only available in British pounds. After looking for it elsewhere, I have not found it. I usually wait for the paperback print. Thank you for the book.
At the Haggard wrote.
The anecdote at the beginning got me. Yesterday, I had a similar experience. I was in a long hallway waiting for my daughter, who is taking Taekwondo. Inside the training room down the hall, there are 12 plus 4-year-olds being lectured to about focus and how to still your body to focus. The entire hallway was lined with parents and their younger charges ALL on phones and tablets. I don't think we'd need to pay hundreds of dollars in classes to teach our children to focus if we simply called them to and exhibited focus, attention in our daily lives.
At Catherine Gagney 5813 wrote.
4 years ago, we took our son, who was 6 at the time, to our village Christmas gathering. Santa, and gifts included. He's not a screen kid. I watched horrified as the 20-plus children opened their cheap, non-battery gifts. They were like zombies. Ages 3 to 10, at first just staring at the gift, and then holding it as if they didn't know how to play with it. The worst part was watching my son, taking his little car, pushing it around, making the brrrr engine noise over and over again systematically in front of each child, trying to engage a playmate. The small village kids in rural Quebec just sat there, blank. These kids are raised on video games and videos. I feel like my son is an island among his peers.
At Green Frog, 6449 wrote,
True. I did my teacher training nearly 20 years ago. Even in the Fent, there was an absolute obsession with IT. You had to try and incorporate it into every single lesson. Just for the sake of it.
At Steve Jacobs, 9320 wrote,
Kids should be able to play outside safely without the threats of pedophiles and child predators, but alas, we live in a land full of grooming gangs and sick, dangerous people who roam freely.
Ferb 1131 wrote,
All that money should be spent on teachers. That's a false dichotomy. Teachers trained in our modern universities are mainly taught to indoctrinate anyway. Much better to encourage homeschooling and for the government not to be spending so much on education initiatives of any kind and keep their nose out of children's education when they're not wanted.
At Herlinac 8282 wrote,
Absolutely agree. Google and the internet should not replace the teacher in the classroom. My daughter is 11 and she is one of the few kids in her grade level who doesn't own a smartphone or iPad or any device. When many parents give electronic devices too easily to their kids, it makes it really hard for us parents who are trying to hold back and restrict screen time to the safe minimum because there is such great peer pressure, and many kids equate being gifted smartphones, iPads, as having good parents who love them, which in reality is contrary to the fact.
At Christine Sidney 4881 wrote,
I'm from Australia. The bill is not intended to limit access. The real issues are porn, gaming, etc. It had different fascist intentions. It's actually quite disturbing. As for screen time generally and at school, I couldn't agree more. They have no place in schools, homes, and relationships.
At Ausgrandic wrote,
As an experienced educator of teenagers, I was initially excited about the internet and the way it could open up so much knowledge for students in low socioeconomic areas whom I served. Sadly, I have seen all of what Miss Winkleman shares here. Students are scared to share their opinions and ask stupid questions. The normal banter and curiosity of the classroom has been silenced. If a student dares to share their opinion after much encouragement from me, they risk hostile and rude jeering from their peers. Students struggle to read a small novel. Even a short text is difficult for them. Many don't know what a joy it is to be lost in a novel or study a complex idea that requires several attempts and much struggle. I have read Hate's The Anxious Generation and agree unequivocally with his concerns. It is all too evident on the ground. Inasmuch as there are some challenges and concerns, I am proud my home country, Australia, has taken a stand. I hope it affects culture. For me, I have almost nearly banned laptops into my classroom to take some ground on student focus and genuine learning. No, I'm not a Luddite, but I do agree tech is a failed experiment, and digital literacy is far different and less harmful to the digital dependency. To all the teachers here, I encourage you to subscribe to Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath and read Jonathan Haidt's book, then place pressure on your principal to roll back this madness. Godspeed.
At Andrew Knight 8778 wrote,
I'm a bit conflicted as I wouldn't have heard this mind-bogglingly superb talk had I not been on my iPad. I would like to hear a talk on grandparents and their use of screens. I know I can't really teach what I don't do.
Jerry Judd wrote,
The master and slave analogy is key. As a recently retired MFL teacher, I found the interactive whiteboard a wonderful tool for focusing pupils' attention and presenting stimulating illustrative materials, most of them self-produced. But the most important learning tools were their dry white mini boards and their exercise books. Pupils were encouraged to analyze and critique their own and their neighbors' performance in the classroom, and written work was marked promptly and in a way that encouraged them to find and correct their own mistakes. Passive learning is no learning. And by the way, I have never owned a smartphone for the simple reason that I don't need one.
Estella Australia wrote,
This lady is overly optimistic about Australia protecting children with the under-16s, Bill. It's not about our children. It's the boot in the door for much more to come.
At Martin James 5963 wrote,
I was working in a Korean university in 1999 when they introduced a classroom full of new computers. We used them for a year and then everyone realized they were a waste of educational time. They sat unused in that room for the next 3 years I was there.
At Granny Annie 2948 wrote,
In Australia, we expect that a pub or restaurant will supply toys, colouring in material, and often playground equipment. I have never seen children under about 15 with smartphones. Many kids have dumb phones for practical reasons, like phoning their parents if their bus is late, or if they want to play at a friend's house. As for screen use in school, it does benefit children, if limited. For example, in maths, one child might be 3 years advanced, another might be 3 years behind. And the NAMI systems on our school internet use is excellent. Yes, the kids I know read books. Many of the boys prefer comic form, but that was a moral panic 80 years ago. But in the classroom, they read childhood classics. Charlotte's Web, The Lion, the Witch, and The Wardrobe. As for the proposed legislation, it would restrict kids from accessing YouTube, which I disagree with. Many kids use lectures, etc., to see alternatives to the political narrative. And, funnily, I'm not sure the legislation will restrict PORN, which I would support.
Critical Linker wrote,
Wind back 20 years to a London bus where two people are sitting next to each other. One is reading a paperback novel, the other is engrossed in a newspaper. Each is oblivious to the other's presence.
At John Albert Regali wrote,
It seems to me that John Naisbitt's prediction of high tech, high touch in his book Megatrends, 10 New Directions Transforming Our Lives missed the mark. What we've gotten is high tech, tech touch.